So thanks for the introduction, and thanks for my own introduction. So it's one way, if you ever want to speak, just set up your own events. It's a great excuse for getting up on stage. But what I want to talk through is implementing change, because I've been working as a program manager in Aer Lingus. Previous to that, I worked for 3 years in Ryanair. So the whole time I've been trying to implement these practices and seeing what goes wrong and what pushback there is. So I just want to share some of the experiences there. So I'll start with part one, naivety. So this is kind of assuming that everybody is going to want to follow these ideas. So as we've all talked about and heard, I've done a lot of research into how we can do better product development. So when I started with Aer Lingus, the biggest concern was, or I felt the biggest concern was, you had the business and you had IT. And there was a big silo between them. So what you had, you had digital experience with product UX design over in the business. And then you had myself, I was a program manager with all the IT and delivery in the IT department. So I said, okay, this is going to be the area that I need to tackle. But actually it wasn't a problem. I have great relationship with the head of digital experience. We're both fully aligned on what needs to happen. So then we started trying to implement it. And that's when we found some challenges in delivery. So at a very high level, this is just the stack, this very simplified view of the technical stack. So you've got the UI layers like the website, the mobile apps, voice. You've got a services layer. You have a bus that just sends messages. And then you've got your back-end system, so your e-commerce platform, your data warehouse, those kind of things that store the data. And what happened was, so you do a project, and the projects in Aer Lingus would be a full stack. And then there'd be another project, and they overlap, and a third project, and a fourth project. And what we found was these were all incredibly tightly coupled. So you couldn't actually make a change. When we started talking about, let's do quick cycles, let's do experiments, it was like, okay, well, when can you get this out, this text change? And I was like, 5 months' time? Might be able to get it out the door. Can we test that? Can we get some fast feedback? So obviously that wasn't going to work. The reason why, and just so you know, there's kind of 6 main constraints on a project. The scope, cost, and resources are the obvious ones when you're talking about a project world versus product. But time, the release window. So what I mean by that is, like, you have all these projects going out, these red bars, and then you have just this gap. So when UAT ends, you can enter sit. So there might be a gap here from UAT to that sit, and you go, okay, I can squeeze something into that gap. But that gap only exists 5 months down the road. So they're very kind of far spaced apart. And the other problem was how we did environments. So this might be a little bit technical, but I think it gives a bit of context for some of the challenges that IT have. But they built the full stack. So the e-commerce platform was the main piece that moved. So every time they'd have a new stack, it would be because they were changing the e-commerce platform. But that led to a lot of problems because the e-commerce platforms were big changes, whereas if we wanted to iterate at the UI layer and the services layer, it meant that we had to go as slow as whatever platform that we were working on. So if I'm down here, that project could be 12 months away, but I'm stuck to that project. So that was also causing problems. So I had to do a bit of a reset and put the kind of the integrating on pause while we fixed out some of the IT problems, because until we can get quick delivery, we can't experiment. So then I moved into, it's a technical problem. The release windows, I was saying, okay, well, there's a quick and easy way of doing this. We'll tax the longer projects. You have a tax for every month for how long your project runs. The shorter you do, the less tax, and it exponentially increases. So the longer your project runs, the more expensive it gets. So that way it'll discourage people from doing long projects, and kind of talk through the hidden costs. So big projects have change requests. They have carrying costs, which is the software you've built but haven't released. The blocking cost that I can't get another project out, merge costs, delaying costs, planning costs. There's a lot of hidden costs that go on that nobody's factoring in, and the tax was supposed to kind of expose those costs. But people didn't like that because they were saying, oh, well, we have to sell these projects to the business and we'll make our projects look more expensive, and they're already giving out about them being expensive. So there wasn't much buy-in into that idea. So then I said, okay, let's look at the environments. Instead of having everything on like our e-commerce platforms, let's put all of our new UI and services work on our production e-commerce, and we'll only just do services so that we can make sure that we're backward compatible. Like, let's say you upgrade your back end, you need to make sure that it's not going to break your websites. But then all of the new work will happen on our main one. but that was a bit too hard, like, because it's not really what they wanted to do. So then we said, okay, well let's shrink the path to production, because then I can get more release windows. If every project takes a bit less time, more windows will open up. So we went out to one of our teams that was actually working as more of a product team, and we said, okay, come back to us with some ideas of how you can speed this up. And they did a brilliant job. They came up with some great suggestions, started implementing them, but then they got overruled. So the head of the department came in going, oh, wait a second, what's happening here? I didn't authorize all these changes, so go back to the old way of working. Even though it had actually delivered results, we were going faster. So what I realized was I was taking logic to an emotional argument. And I was trying to explain to people, look, we have to do this. We have to change these. Here's reasons why. Here's an approach that will work. But it was getting shot down because you're not asking people to make a logical thing. They're thinking, okay, well, my job is to get these things out the door. I know how I work today. I don't know how this is going to work in the future. That's a bit risky, so I'm just going to stay where I am. And you might be complaining, but I'm okay where I am. So that was my challenge. So it's not a technical problem, it's a people problem. I don't know if you've ever heard of Conways law, but Conways law says any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. So what we'll find then is, and if I go on to the next one, how a lot of organizations are still structured is in functions. So you would have BAs, you have architecture, developers, QA, and I could have also added in the kind of design, UX, the other functions. Now, the problem with that is technically it's a tailorist way of structuring your company, which is about how can you make it the most cost-efficient structure for your company. And this model is because what you do is each person here is making sure their staff are 100% utilized. And how they do that is they say, well, I'm not accepting anything from anybody else unless it meets a really high standard, and you have to document everything, and everything has to be perfect before I'll accept it in, because otherwise then my staff are going to have to deal with it. So the problem there is that if you're trying to do a project that cuts across all of these, or a product delivery, then it's very drawn out, it's very slow. But this is the organization structure, so the process will follow a waterfall process, because that's how a structure like this, an organization in this structure, will design its process. So when I came in going, no, cross-functional, get everybody together, let's break down the silos, essentially what that meant was pivoting it on its side and saying, instead of these guys being the head of the departments, the projects are now kind of the ultimate authority. They're the ones who decide how things work. They're the ones who decide the way things are going, where people are going to work, how they're going to work. And then it becomes a political problem, because now you're taking people's power away from them. So then you get a massive pushback to that, because people are saying, well, no, I'm not going to accept that. I have a powerful position, and you want to put me in one of these side positions. Not going to happen. And where it comes down to is core beliefs. What do people really believe? And a lot of people, if you've been working 20 years in a one way of working, and you come along and you go, well, it's great, but actually it's fundamentally the opposite is the best way of working. It's not just, so A, it's political and you're doing a power struggle, but B, it's kind of saying, people are very hard to take an open mind. You have to be very diplomatic in how you phrase some of these things. But you move from time and cost to value. Time and cost is brilliant if you're in a functional structure, because you don't care about delivery. You're just making sure that my team is utilized. The method to scale is standardize everything, and then it'll scale perfectly, whereas you need to be bespoke to the problems. Same thing with people, how you optimize efficiency, etc. They're core beliefs that are fundamentally the opposite to what the people in the organizations already believe. So that brings it to the next challenge, which is how do you align the management around changing these core beliefs? So the teams, in any implementation, you need a combination of top-down and bottom-up. Neither will work on its own. So we had the enthusiasm from the people on the ground. People on the ground really wanted to adopt these kind of changes in how they work. But how did we align the management? And there's two kind of ways that you change somebody's core beliefs. You incite a crisis, or a crisis actually happens. So you hear about these companies that are on their knees, they're about to go bankrupt, and then they just say, look, we've nothing else to lose. let's just try something different, and it works. But the other option, because you don't want to instill a crisis if there isn't one, is leadership. So you need strong leadership. You need people to say, look, this is the way it has to happen. And the way that you influence behavior or behavioral change, there's a guy, BJ Fogg in, I think it's Stanford, he came up with a behavioral change model. But basically he's saying that you can motivate people, and you can say, you can get people really excited about, oh, let's try something new. But if you don't teach them how to do it, and you don't make it really easy for them to do it, even if they're really motivated, but even if there's a little bit of a challenge in doing it, they're not going to do it. So you need to attack both the motivation and the ability for them to do it. And that's how you'll instigate behavioral change. So what we did was we started with motivation. We got the head of the department to say, okay, well, from now on, this is what everybody has to do. Teams must continually optimize towards a rapid and sustainable flow of value for their customers. So now, at least there's an anchor around it. Instead of it being attack on the core beliefs, it's saying, well, no, this is the vision. This is what we have to do. This is what the department is telling us is how we have to work. So you're kind of tackling a bit of the motivation side. With the ability, it was hitting my head against a brick wall for about a year. So what we're doing is a trial run, absolved of responsibility, which is essentially shifting them over into that kind of pivoting the structure on its side. So we're saying all responsibility lies with the project, and you're going to be absolved. If everything blows up, you get to laugh and say, I told you so, but at least let people try. So that's kind of how we instigated the change. Now what we needed to do was align the team. So we got the whole team from our UX design, dev, QA, our infrastructure guys into a room. It actually took quite a few, like just a couple hour sessions over 4 weeks. And we said, okay, let's talk through the entire flow and base it around this vision. How do we want to work? And what the team came out with was this. I know it's a process flow, but essentially it's very much aligned to what the model is. It's saying that let's do small incremental pieces. Let's do a hell of a lot of automated testing so that we can, instead of having these huge long release cycles, we can be releasing as quickly as possible. Then what we did was we said, okay, well that's great. That's a process up here, but how we work is here. So how do we get from A to B? And we just started identifying gaps. And we said, okay, well, for UX, this is something new that you need to do. For BAs, you need to change this way. Devs, you need to change. And everybody bought into, okay, I'm going to tackle this one problem. So over the course of 3-4 weeks, everyone has objectives, key results to say, okay, well, what can I change? And how am I going to do that? And we're going to step kind of closer to that process. And happily ever after. Not really. The requesting it worked to enable the team to define their process, and it enabled the team to set up their way of working. But the managers who were told to step back aren't happy about it. So you have this bit of a standoff that I think it's just a case of over time demonstrating kind of the benefits, demonstrating trust. It's not a solved problem at the moment. It's a problem I'm still encountering. But it's at least we're a step closer to delivering quicker. The team motivation, purpose is green, like they know what they're trying to strive for, they know their process. Mastery is blue, like we're improving, so that's those steps that they're taking, going, okay, I need to learn something here, I need to improve in a particular way. Relatedness isn't there yet, so relatedness being we're all one big team. Because they've come from this functional siloed mentality, it's still, they aren't gelling as a team yet. And that's something that we're really working hard to try make people think. You ask them who's your team, they'll mention it's their function versus the product that they're working on. And the ultimate aim is to get autonomy so that the team can then function as an autonomous team and be able to deliver. So it's slow going, but it's kind of, there is progress. So it sometimes feels like you're not achieving anything, but progress does happen slowly but surely. And good luck. So, any questions?
Just to make sure that are we going to find sorry. I just want to make sure that are we going to find these slides of this presentation on the UXDX website or somewhere else?
Yeah, actually, we tend to just send out with the videos, but we'll probably host them on the site. We don't normally.
There's somewhat on the website, but YouTube is probably where all of our presentations will go up.
With the videos, and the videos will have a link to the slides underneath them.
Cool, thanks.
And you'll notice that there's no mention of the company in those slides because I don't want to get killed by those.
Yeah, and it was fine. Yeah, and thanks for the nice presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions?
You actually mentioned a quick delivery. How would you define a quick delivery?
It depends on, so that was that kind of evolution of process piece that I did. Kind of the research is that you can't jump from like a waterfall down to a truly agile. You have to kind of take incremental steps down. So where we're at the moment, in our mobile apps, we're releasing every month, and that's super quick for the organization. But they're structured more as a product. They have a dedicated team. It's a long-lived team, kind of continuous funding. On the website, it's still around 3 months. Like if somebody comes and asks me to make a change, about 3 months. But we're trying to break it away from the project world to become more of a product. So my goal and what I've set the team, I've set 1 week for deliveries. I want 1 day, and then, but it's, if you get to 1 week, what happens is the same process is the process they've done to get to 1 week just keeps going, and they'll get down to 1 day, they'll get down to multiple times a day.
I totally agree with the idea of removing the silos, right? It makes perfect sense. But then you have multiple teams. Do you plan to standardize the process across all teams, or each team basically will just be responsible for their way of working?
It's somewhat standardized, but not fully standardized. So there'll be boundaries kind of presented in terms of what the teams are able to do and where they can innovate in between. Mobile apps, for example, you don't want to release too frequently because somebody has to download an app every time you do a release. Whereas a website, you can be releasing all the time. So we kind of made the decision that we'd only go as far as continuous delivery with mobile apps, but I want to go to continuous deployments with the web. So it kind of depends on the platform and the skill set of the team. So I very much see it as a kind of an evolutionary step. It's kind of where's the team in that. So if the team is starting here, well then let's only push them so far. But if a team is kind of more mature, you can push them further.